Okay, again, this particular graphic, if you look on there, is hidden in the middle layer, just working on the top segment. And depending on how you like to work, I'm going to show it two different ways that you can illustrate this. You could try to use the pen tool or the shape tool, or a couple different ways to do this. One is just using the ellipse tool, and every tool has a little caret mark is going to be a window shade that pops open and lets you leave those tools open, and you can always just close them if you need to see them close through that. Okay. With the ellipse tool, I'm just going to try to make the overall outside of this letter, which is the letter G, kind of place it in there, and just swap it so it's just a stroke, and then click off of it with the command on the pasteboard, and then click another shape and use the space bar to try to indicate that inside one here. So that's kind of using just some of the shape tools to help there. You could use the pen tool and try to illustrate it from there, which would be fine, and just to kind of give it a color so you can see this part. So I'm trying to go out and clip this section. So I'm taking the pen tool and just inside here, just kind of clipping this section out here. And this is trying to just use shapes to help me create this. So the shift key connecting these two together, and the pathfinder allows me to make that one piece. And this is on top of the one that's in the background. So I can highlight both of them just by making a selection on just part of it, and then going to the pathfinder, and then the second item over just punches that through. So now you can see that I can add points into the top of this, or just create it continuing using the shapes. So I'll just take the rectangle tool and come down here, and just going to move this over just slightly and interpret this drawing, and right on the anchor point, and right to that anchor point. That makes this shape. And each time just kind of minimizing that selection. The smart guides, when I get into something this close, is the purple highlights that, allows me to make this particular shape. And coming down here, same idea. I can start right at the anchor point here, and the smart guides help me line this part up too. And then, when I zoom out of this, I have all of these parts, and just make sure I select them all like so, and just use the pathfinder, and it makes it all one particular shape. So if I take that off, you can kind of see the overall graphic. The only thing missing up at the top is the little serif up at this section. So one way to do it is to just take the pen tool, and it'll click right on the anchor point, and I can go straight up with the shift key to keep it perfectly straight, and then come across. And now I have this little extension. I'm just making a selection box around the both with the pathfinder, and that makes that selection. The direct selection tool allows me to click on these corners, just highlight the corner point, and there's a little circle widget that allows me to curve this if I feel that that looks like it's going to be curved in there, so I can change that overall piece and give it a different color under the swatches. So that gives me this overall graphic. And like I said, you could just use the pen tool to illustrate it all the way through. And the other option is to take two letter forms, separate letters, G and L, and change these to paths, so it just kind of show it to you. Here's the G. I'm going to switch it so it's just a stroke, and that way I can kind of manipulate a little bit to get the overall size of this segment. And while it's still highlighted, just go to Type and go down where it says Create Outlines, and what it does, it takes it out of it being editable text and now makes it a path. So I can highlight all of these sections up at the top and just drop them down, and it fits there. So I'm trying to keep the letter form a little bit based off of the drawing, so it has that little bit more of that finish. And then here's the letter L. Just go to Type, Create Outlines, and now just come up in here and just try to adjust with the direct selection tool. You have two arrows, selection tool and direct selection. and just use the arrow key on the keyboard to drop it down to here, and then take a look at these pieces and just move it over down to the end like that. So it gives you a pretty good beginning part of it, and keeping those connected. So now I'll give it color, two separate colors, and now selecting both of these with the pathfinder, since they're now shapes, they become one item. You can kind of see how that extends itself over. So let's see, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, take a look at this character again, and just move it over a little bit. See if I can select this guy here. So just by taking this with the direct selection tool, kind of moving these sections over to fit into that. So I'm going to lock this one. You can go to Object and lock a selection so it doesn't interfere. So here's the direct selection tool. So I'm going to take all of these points, just bump them over a little bit, like so. And take the entire letter and just move it over a little bit. So now see what happens when I make this into a pathfinder into one piece. So just go to Object, Unlock All, and make it all one segment there. So now this all becomes one item. If there's a couple of points in there, so you can see all the points that are created in there. So that's using the letter form, and this is just drawing it from scratch. And then once you have that, you can go back through and again try the different styles of the gradients. So when you have the swatches open, you can see some of the segments that you might use for the gradients. And the gradient tool will let you online edit this, so kind of jumping ahead with it a little bit. And the command lets you pick up and select these pieces. And again, you have effects under effects, which are some of the Photoshop segments. So when you take a look at these stylize and everything, you can put a drop shadow on it. Click OK. And it gives you a little bit of kind of dimension. You can always eventually categorize these into Photoshop, and then this will give you the Command Shift 4